What's up, Barefoot Nation? Today I'm going to show you guys how to plant field-grown shrubs, and this also applies to trees. Now, before we get into it, I want you guys to notice some of the clips. The clips that I'm actually planting it are in the spring. So, I'm a huge advocate for leaving the leaves. These leaves have just fallen in place and just left there. So I want you guys to notice the clips later in the video are filmed in December when the coating is fresh, and the rest is filmed in the spring. So just pay attention to how fast those leaves actually break down throughout the winter and feed your soil. All right, let's get into it. So when planting laurels or any B&B shrub, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind that are going to be different from planting a container. It's worth noting too, if you're planting anything that's marginally hardy in your zone, then you're going to definitely want to make sure that you're planting it as early in the season as possible. Basically what that's going to do for a marginally hardy plant, whether that's whatever that may be in your zone, it's going to give it the whole summer to establish. So as you can see, I've started to dig my hole, and you'll notice about my hole is that I'm not necessarily trying to dig it twice the size of the container, mainly because these B&B, which stands for balled and burlapped, trees and shrubs are grown in rock hard field soil. They're grown in the field basically, so they don't, it's still good. I'm still gonna backfill with a little bit of compost and feed the soil a little bit, but it's not as important as with a container plant. Alright guys, so you can see that I've done the critical step of unwrapping the burlap from your plant. Now you don't want to do all of it, but just where the trunk or the stem of the tree or shrub is tied up. You do not want that rope to be there, because otherwise you'll girdle the tree, or in other words, you'll strangle it as it gets bigger. So that's a critical step. That is basically one of the most important things to do when you're planting ball and burlap trees and shrubs. The other thing you'll notice here is that what's called the flare roots, or in other words, where the stem and the roots meet, are deep in the soil. Already I've taken about 2 inches of soil off this root ball, and they're still not showing. So this is actually a very small root mass that you don't need to dig a very big hole. And the importance of the flare roots showing, one, is so that the tree can breathe. That's the function. But the secondary, the horticultural part of that is, if the tree can breathe, it's not gonna sucker. So basically what's gonna happen is, if you have all this moisture building up here, there are buds that are invisible along the stem that will sprout, and then you'll get all this root growth and all these little bottom shoots that shouldn't really be there, even if the shrub doesn't normally sucker. And so right here is part of the flare. So basically you can see sort of that the trunk and the roots meet. And I took off about 1/3 of that root ball to get there. That's common with basically any nursery plant, to have it be planted too deep. So remember to do that. Next, you're gonna take your shovel. In my case, I just got a little kind of foxhole shovel, I call it, and I'm gonna pack the burlap into the hole. All right guys, and so after you're done backfilling, what you're gonna wanna do is, I always like to tamp down the fresh soil with my foot just to get out any air pockets. You don't necessarily want to heavily compact the soil, but just getting it so that the root ball has been fully backfilled around. After you do that, it's going to be important to put a nice coat of mulch over your freshly planted plants. Now, as you can tell, there are leaves on the ground. It is actually not springtime anymore, and this coat of mulch, this is actually the skip laurel's second coat of mulch. This is more for freshly planted things that are marginal in your zone. It really helps to give them a nice thick coat of mulch right before winter too, just to help keep those roots a little bit warmer. Now this isn't a heavy coat of mulch like you would on bananas or something tropical for the winter. This is just really probably you know, a good couple inches, 2 or 3 inch coating of mulch over the top. And then in the case of this laurel here, you can see that I had it planted near a stone retaining wall. I'm actually not happy with how this retaining wall turned out, so I'm probably going to redo it. Another note with mulching that you can see is that the mulch is still kept away from the flare roots. So you can see the part of the flare right here, and it's piled against the roots, but it's not piled against the root flare. So you really do want to keep mulch and dirt away from the trunk of the tree, just to prevent that piling up and suckering, as we discussed earlier. And keep in mind too, guys, mulch does not just have to be the typical mulch that we think of, you know, that we buy. Utilizing the free mulch from the trees is not only better for your trees, but also it's free, so that always helps too. You know, and it's gonna decay by the time springtime comes around. And the next step for newly planted anything, but especially B&B shrubs, is gonna be to make sure that you water them regularly. You're gonna want to give them a deep soak. So put that hose right at the base of the shrub. Just let that hose trickle there every other day, give or take, for about half an hour, and you want to do that at minimum through the hottest part of the summer. For a broadleaf evergreen shrub such as the skip laurel here, you're also going to want to make sure that you water them when it's really windy out, especially when it's cold winds during the winter, because that will help to reduce transpiration, stuff like that, just to make sure that they really take. It's not essential, but it'll certainly help. So as far as fertilizer goes, which is really kind of the last step to planting something, I don't like to plant newly planted anything. To just basically take an organic fertilizer and just kind of huck it throughout all the gardens. So just kind of distributing organic fertilizer throughout. And I don't even do that all the time. You know, the leaves breaking down in your garden is really going to feed the soil and give it exactly what it needs. But having the fertilizer on top is just an added bonus. So, although if you guys do have water features, be sure to not let the runoff from the fertilizer get into the water features. The slope goes away behind the waterfall, so I can fertilize the laurel right there without any runoff, but I graded it such that there's a ridge right here, so I'm not going to want to fertilize any of these, which this is just liriope and ostrich fern, so they don't need it anyway. But I guess I'm going off on a tangent about fertilizer. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully now, whatever tree or shrub you see at the nursery, whether it's potted or B&B, you guys are like, I got this. If you want to see more content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. If you like this video, be sure to give it a big ol' thumbs up. And also, I want to hear from you guys, so leave a comment down below. Were you guys afraid to plant B&B, or was it kind of like no factor? So I'm curious to hear that and everything else that you drop down in the comments down below. Alright guys, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.